Hello there, Sophie Desso, and I'm here to review Howl's Moving Castle, the book from the author Diana Wynne Jones. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, not too sure how to read one of the surnames. But I also have here, as you can see from the way I'm dressing, I also have here the movie Howl's Moving Castle, which was done by Hayao Miyazaki and was inspired by the book. Now, this won't be so much a book review as it will be more about the differences as someone who has watched the movie and adores the movie, and afterwards reading the book, what are the main differences that I spotted. So do be aware that this will be a review with a lot of spoilers because I will be comparing main plot points, slight differences, so do be warned that I will mention spoilers for both the movie and the book. Now, as someone who really likes the movie, and I actually watched the movie countless times before reading the book, I can say that the book is still a wonderful read. So, as you can see, this edition that I have, which is in English, so I read the original English version. Its cover is inspired by Hayao Miyazaki's movie, as you can see here. And as someone who has first watched the movie, I still found it a really good read. I love the writing. I am very curious about reading other books from the same author because I think it's just really enjoyable the way that she writes. And I still loved the way I was able to connect the descriptions and the actions and the moments to the movie while also seeing new things as described by the author and being able to create my own imagery based on what she described and what was happening. So it was really interesting reading the book as someone who watched the movie first because I was correlating moments of the movie to moments of the book, but there were also moments that didn't happen in the movie and that I was able to create my own imagery and use my own imagination to fill in the blanks. So reading this book was basically watching a very extended version of Hayao Miyazaki. Now, does that mean that the movie is following the story with utmost fidelity? It is not. The main key moments are there, but the book has other focuses. So the movie and the book have different paths that kind of lead to the same ending. To basically end this spoiler-free part, I do recommend the book a lot because it's such a nice, cozy read, and you will just, even if you didn't watch the movie or if you watched the movie, none of that will affect the way you read this book. So I do completely recommend. And this version specifically, it has also an interview with the author where they questioned about her perspective and what she thought about Studio Ghibli's movie. And she said that even though it's a different take, she loves it very much and she really enjoys what Hayao Miyazaki did with the movie. So, with that out of the way, I do recommend the book a lot. Let's go right into the differences. So, from watching the movie, you get the sense, so you have this girl that is living a very boring life, working at the hatter shop that belongs to her family. She doesn't seem to wish for a lot more than that. She kind of leads this cozy life. And she has one sister, Letty, that is working maybe in the next town. It's a short ride from there. And then she, ends up being cursed by the Witch of the Waste. And after that, she goes looking for another powerful wizard that may lift her curse, and she arrives at the answer that Howl must be the one to help her. And she goes looking for his moving castle and she gets involved with him and the other people, well, Calcifer and Michael, that are there as well, and they begrudgingly accept her, and she goes on to basically see another side of the war, all that is at stake, and end up taking pity and befriending the Witch of the Waste. And by the end of the movie, after seeing the horrible consequences of the war, Howl and Sophie end up together and the war comes to an end thanks to what was solved. So even watching the movie at that time, for me, the main antagonist seems like it's the war. The war, you see these terrible consequences from the war. You see that wizards are helping make this war even worse because there are wizards on both sides fighting. And then you see that there's some plot about the prince of some kingdom being missing, and which was Turnip Head, and then he reveals that, okay, I'm the prince and I'm gonna go and tell my king to stop this senseless war and peace all around. Well, the antagonist in the book isn't the war, so that's already a major plot point that is different. So Hayao Miyazaki chose to make the villain the war, but the villain is, as you could maybe have guessed, the Witch of the Waste. She is the villain throughout the whole book, and the book ends with her defeat. So that's how you reach the happily ever after that you see in the movie. Of course, by also solving other things, but yeah, basically that. Let's go slowly about this. There are a ton of differences. I will not nitpick a lot. I will just say the main differences that we see. So, for starters, Sophie is the eldest daughter of 3. We only see one sister, which is Letty, but she actually has another sister, which is Martha. And the sister that is actually working at the bakery is Martha and not Letty, although it was supposed to be Letty. So basically Martha uses a spell to disguise herself as Letty and work at the bakery. Now, why would that happen? Well, let me rewind a little bit. So the book also gives a little bit more context to Sophie's family. So, like I said, she's the eldest of 3. Apparently, in this universe, there's some kind of curse related to the eldest daughter. Basically, the eldest daughter is always damned to have the short end of the stick, kind of thing. So the younger you are, the brighter is your future, the more beautiful you are, stuff like this. And she's come to terms with that. She's happy. She just wants her sisters to be happy. You don't see her father, but she mentions that her mother died and her father remarried with her stepmother, which is the character that I thought was her mother in the movie. So we are actually seeing the stepmother. The stepmother, after the father dies, kept with the hat shop business, which was the family business. And because the hat shop wasn't making ends meet, she sent the other 2 daughters to other things. So she sent Letty to work in the bakery, and she sent Martha to be a witch apprentice over at a friend of a friend, through connections that she had. But basically, Letty and Martha didn't want what their mother chose for them, stepmother. So Martha went there just enough time to learn a spell to disguise herself as Letty and switch places with her. So basically, Martha went to the bakery while Letty went to be a witch apprentice. The stepmother decided that Sophie would keep on with her at the hat shop. And it is described in this book that their stepmother is a very cunning woman because she basically leaves Sophie to be, well, it's not like she imprisons Sophie to the house, but because Sophie is very defeated in life and she has come to terms that she will not have a bright future, she feels like it's her fate to just be in the hat shop sewing hats all day and never leave. And she actually develops some kind of anxiety about going outside because she wants to visit her sister that is closer, which would be Letty at the bakery, but she's always postponing it because she's actually anxious about stepping outside because she spends the entire day in the hat shop just sewing hats. And what you don't know at the time is that the hat shop is booming. The business is booming. The hats that Sophie sews become very popular and successful, and the hat shop is thriving so much that her stepmother is most of the time outside and spending the money without giving any money to Sophie with the excuse that she's under an apprenticeship, even though she's not learning anything from her. And she just goes outside and spends the money for herself and to try and get another man as well, which is something that we also see in the movie because she later on appears with a new man, like a count of some kind. That also happens in the book. You know, eventually the sisters come in contact with each other. They try to open Sophie's eyes to this. And one thing that you don't know, the reason why the hats are having so much success when they are sewn by Sophie, you would assume it's because she's a very good seamstress, right? But no, that's not the reason. The reason is, and you don't know that at the time, you will discover as you go on, is because Sophie has an inclination towards magic. So unwillingly, she's imbuing magic in the stuff that she touches or more often sews. So these hats have magic imbued into them. And she will later on also do this with other pieces of clothing, and she will also do it with the cane. So you see in the movie that she walks with a cane. It's a random old cane that she comes across. And that also happens in the book, but she imbues magic by talking to the cane as if it was alive. She imbues magic into this cane. So it's interesting. I will say that I like the fact that she's just a tenacious human girl in the movie, rather than having magic in this one. But I guess it makes a little bit of sense because, I mean, a normal human girl, but I do find it more appealing that she would be just a regular girl bossing around this very powerful wizard and seeing all this magic happen around her, and she's just so tenacious that she puts every person in their place without having any magic aiding her. I find that I will give that to Miyazaki. I find that much more powerful than she having magic as well. But it is what it is, and it's the original story, and I still find it interesting. It gives some nice moments to the story. By the way, something that we see in the movie is Sophie getting younger at certain points. That doesn't happen in this book. She releases herself from the curse because she has magic. So the way she perceives herself, because she's very defeated about life, she's keeping herself in the curse when she could break it. But that is a theme that is told about in the book. But she basically turns from old to young as soon as she understands that, no, I have the youth in me. It's not something, oh, I'm doing this unknowingly and sometimes I get old. But I also like Miyazaki's interpretation because it's very interesting that sometimes when she believes in herself, she becomes younger due to this, because she moves, and you can see that being reflected in her outer appearance. It's very interesting. Once again, it's different interpretations, but they work so well. I will say that Howl, for example, I will say that Sophie is more or less the same in the movie and in the book. You can see more of her sassy side in the book. She's a little bit more kind in the movie. She's a lot more sassy in the book, but it's more or less the same. Howl, however, is portrayed as more of a lady killer, and sometimes a little bit too arrogant. The book will also say that most of the time that's to keep people at bay, and he's doing this on purpose so he can distance himself from other people. But he is a little bit more arrogant, and he kind of softens, and you get used to it as you go through the book, and you can see his good side along with Sophie, but he is less likable than the movie portrays him to be. And let's talk about Michael. I'm not too sure if the movie ever mentions Michael's age, but for me, Michael is a very small kid, like a 10-year-old, maybe 12. Michael is a little bit older. He's a 15-year-old in this book, so Sophie mentions that he's close to Martha's age. And this is important because because he's a 15-year-old, and Martha apparently should be around the same age, he's actually courting Martha. So Sophie finds out that Michael is interested in Martha, and he goes to visit the bakery and spend time with her, and Martha also reciprocates his feelings. So that's a piece of lore that we don't see in the movie, because Michael is more childish and more of a kid. Also, they will, both Michael, Calcifer, and even Howl will show much more difficulty in accepting Sophie than they did in the movie. Of course, the movie is shorter, so we don't have as much time to see that, but during quite a while they begrudgingly accept Sophie into the castle, but they are always treating her. She's like, I'm also gonna clean everything and whatnot, but they really perceive her like something that should not be there, and they do some comments, how sometimes actively kind of insults or jabs at Sophie for being a nosy woman, and they are much more against her presence there, and they kind of get used to it. They kind of they kind of accept their fate. And especially Calcifer and Michael at a certain point start defending her, because Howl is still a little bit aggressive. Once again, you will find out that he's doing this because he's trying to warn her and because he cares, but he's not showing it, like keeping a tough facade in front of her. There is also a moment where, through the majority of the book, you will think that Howl is trying to court Letty. So Howl knows Letty, and as you can see, you will connect every single sister back to Sophie through Howl and Michael. And because Howl has lost his heart, because he offered it to the fire demon Calcifer, just like in the movie, he is really deceived by outer appearance of other women. He will basically fall in love very quickly. And it's like the saying goes, he falls in love with a girl, a very beautiful girl. As soon as the girl shows interest in him, he loses interest in the pursuit and breaks their heart. That is because of the curse. And there's also another curse that was given to him by the Witch of the Waste, which is not mentioned in the movie, that is fulfilling itself. So basically, the Witch of the Waste wants his heart, because the Witch of the Waste is the same as Howl. She has given her heart to a fire demon, but that demon has already consumed her heart completely, and she's not a human anymore. She has lost her humanity to the wishes of the demon, and the demon wants Howl as kind of a new host, wants his powers. I don't remember clearly that, but he's interested in Howl's powers, and he wants to get his hands on his heart. So the Witch of the Waste put a spell, a curse on Howl, and it's a poem from his land. Now, there's something that it isn't mentioned at all in the movie, is where Howl comes from. And he comes from a country named Wales, which is actually portrayed here as like an alternate dimension, but as the book describes Wales through the eyes of Sophie, it seems to be like nowadays, our world nowadays. So he comes from the real world, and he lives in this alternate kind of reality, this other dimension where demons and magic are a thing. And he went there because he knew magic, and the Witch of the Waste was, I think, also originally from Wales, or either that or she disguised herself from as someone from Wales. So the Witch of the Waste never turns into the cute old lady that you see in the movie, nor does she befriend Sophie. She is a villain through and through throughout the whole book. Of course, there's gonna be a full-on battle between Howl and the Witch of the Waste, where she is absolutely consumed by the demon, and Howl will defeat her and basically put an end to her curse, to her reign of terror, and solve the mystery of the disappearance of the king's brother that started this whole thing. Of course, he is still the turnip head. There's a thing, it's a little bit more gross because you have a separation of the body. There's some kind, there's, I wouldn't say body horror, but there's some descriptions that are a little bit more intense and that show that the Witch of the Waste is such a terrible woman and a force to be reckoned with, because she also kills a character which is Howl's teacher, magic teacher, and you can see that there's no way to redeem this character because she has lost herself to her desires a long time ago, which is different from what Miyazaki decided to do about her character. Sophie then proceeds to, as well as in the movie, break Calcifer's and Howl's curse and return Howl's heart. So everyone gets a happy ending. We also see something that we don't see at all in the movie, which is Howl's family. Yes, it's a little bit difficult to imagine, but Howl has a family. So he has a sister and he has a niece that he very much likes to visit and play with. Now, the relationship with his family is a little bit strained. He doesn't, I think he never fully explained what he does. So even though he has a little bit of money, he doesn't overcharge as well. You can see in some of his actions that he is a kind-hearted man, because when he sees that the people that come to him are poor people with asking stuff to solve their daily lives issues, he sometimes doesn't even bother to charge them, or charges something that is not at all equivalent to the service that he's giving. So it's really weird because he will show this kind side to him, but then he will just waste money on clothes because he's a little bit superficial and he cares a lot about how he presents himself. There's a lot of differences that I could go on about, and some even I don't think I recall, but some of the few difference that I remember is Howl as a guitar that he carries everywhere apparently, because apparently he thinks it's an item to seduce, even though he doesn't really know how to play the guitar. Sophie doesn't dress in bright colors, so we see her in the beginning with a green pale dress. It's kind of a not very bright green, and then when she's older she wears a blue dress. But in the book she's always wearing a gray dress with a gray shawl, so she's always dressed in these very gray colors to kind of reflect how she feels inside. The guard that flirts with Sophie at the beginning of the movie is actually Howl in disguise. Doesn't seem that much of a gentleman anymore, doesn't he? But yeah, it's revealed later on that that was him, and he proceeds, because he interacted with her in that moment, he proceeds to spend the entire book looking for her because of that moment, because of the genuine interest that she sparked in him. The Witch of the Waste will disguise herself as a teacher slash librarian as a way to try and get close to Howl. Because she's very beautiful, Howl will try to seduce her as well. There's a lot of moments and situations that are not shown in the movie, but the movie does show the majority of them. And besides the different path that Miyazaki shows in focusing on the war rather than making the Witch of the Waste the villain and kind of redeeming her at the end, it's a different take, but I think it has its own value. So I would say that both the book and the movie I recommend both. I really love the movie. You will see a Howl that is much more gentlemanly and mysterious, and even though he's also mysterious in the book, he is more arrogant. I wouldn't say foul-mouthed, but he's, makes jabs at Sophie very frequently, so you don't feel that romantic atmosphere that you could see from the very beginning. So he is less appealing, but he will gradually become more charming as the story goes on. Now, this book is the first of a trilogy, so you actually have two more books from this trilogy, because it's a series, which is Castle in the Air and House of Many Ways. Now, I won't make any promises about reading the sequels, but I am intrigued as to what the sequels are about. When I was finishing this book, I was afraid because there was a lot going on. I wasn't sure that this was gonna end at the same point that the movie ended, but my fears were unfounded because it's exactly that. The movie portrays exactly the end of this book. So if I was interested in reading, the reason why I wanted to read this was because I loved the movie so much. But I really enjoyed the writing, so I would be very interested in seeing what more awaits for Howl and Sophie, even though they are supposedly in their happy end. What are the sequels about? So, not making any promises, but who knows? Maybe in the future I will do another video talking about the books that come next. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I didn't spend a lot of time. There's a lot of differences, small details, expansions on certain scenes like Sophie's visit to the palace. But I will say that some things that left me confused in the movie's plot are much more defined and explained in the book, which is absolutely normal because the book has more time and this is, a normal length movie, not too long, not too short, but doesn't have the time to explore and show all the details that the book has. So recommend both the movie and the book. It's a very interesting read, and hey, if you like this kind of content, please feel free to leave a like, leave a comment saying what other differences would you like to hear about, what do you think would be worth mentioning, and yeah, feel free to share your thoughts. And thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this review and small comparison. There's many more details that I could share, but I do encourage you to read the book. And if you want to support, feel free to leave a like, subscribe the channel for more videos, and I hope to see you in the next video. May music always be your life force.